The fence wasn't just wood and nails to me. It was the last thing Sarah and I built together. We put it up during her final summer, back when the doctors still used careful language like treatment plan and hopeful response, and we pretended those words meant something permanent. The lake was calm that year, like it was holding its breath with us. We'd sit on overturned buckets, feet in the water, planning the fence plank by plank like it was a tiny kingdom wall. "Not too tall," she said, tapping the sketch with her pencil. "I still want to see the water, and not too short," I replied. "I don't want strangers wandering in like they own it." She smiled at that. "Then we make it ours." So we did. Oak boards, hand-cut, sanded smooth. We planted climbing roses along the posts so they'd bloom every spring. It took us 3 weeks because we worked slow, stopping for lemonade, stopping when she got tired, stopping just to sit and listen to the waves slap against the dock. When she passed that fall, the fence stayed. It became the line between what was mine and what the world could take. It kept the tourists from wandering down to my dock. It kept drunk boaters from using my shore like a parking lot. It kept the memory intact, quiet, undisturbed. For 15 years, no one complained. Not the HOA, not the neighbors, not the city. It was on the original plat maps, grandfathered in, approved. I had paperwork older than most of the houses on that street. Then Delilah moved in. She arrived in a black SUV with tinted windows and a moving crew that looked like they belonged to a movie star. The house across the road had been empty for 2 years. Some out-of-state owner who never used it. Delilah bought it in cash. That was the first thing people noticed. Second thing was how she stood when she talked to you. Chin slightly raised, eyes calculating, like she was already planning how you'd fit into her life instead of the other way around. She introduced herself at the mailbox the first time we met. Big sunglasses, perfect smile. "Hi, I'm Delilah. I just moved in. I'm so excited to finally live by the lake." I nodded. "Welcome." Her gaze drifted past me, past the yard, and stopped at my dock. "Is that private?" "Yes," I said. She tilted her head. "That fence must make it hard to enjoy the view." "It keeps the view peaceful," I replied. That should have been the end of it. Polite, neutral, done. But a week later, I saw her standing across the street with a tape measure, not measuring her own yard, measuring mine. I didn't confront her. I didn't think much of it. People get curious. Lakefront property makes people strange. 2 weeks later, she was HOA president. She ran unopposed. Suddenly, rules started appearing. New ones, tall ones, complicated ones. The kind written by someone who liked watching people squirm trying to understand them. The first notice came in a white envelope. Violation, non-conforming structure. I laughed when I read it. Actually laughed, out loud, because I thought it was a mistake. I went to the HOA office with my paperwork, the approval letter from 2008, the plat map, the grandfather clause. Delilah was behind the desk. She didn't even glance at the documents. "That fence violates the updated aesthetic code," she said. "It was approved 15 years ago. Standards evolve. It's on my property." She smiled then, a small one. "Property is complicated near water." I felt something tighten in my chest. "I built that fence with my wife." She didn't blink. "It obstructs community access to the shoreline." "There is no community access," I said. "This is private frontage." She leaned back in her chair. "That depends on interpretation." That's when I realized she wasn't looking at my fence like a rule violation. She was looking at it like a barrier between her and what she wanted. She had no lake access. Her mansion sat across the road, technically lake adjacent but legally dry. The only way to the water was through my land or through a narrow public launch half a mile away. She didn't want to walk. She wanted to own the shortcut. For weeks after that, I noticed her more, always watching, standing on her balcony with binoculars, walking near my roses like she was inspecting livestock, taking pictures with her phone. Once, I caught her peering through the fence slats. "You lost something?" I asked. "I'm just admiring the view," she said. "It's a shame it's wasted on one person." That sentence stuck with me. Wasted, as if the fence existed only to deny her something she was entitled to. Then came the threats. Fines, liens, asset seizure, all printed neatly on HOA letterhead. She said the fence had to go. She said it blocked a planned access pathway. She said she'd give me 14 days. I rebuilt a loose plank instead. I trimmed the roses. I sat on the bench Sarah and I made and watched the water. On the 15th day, the trucks came. I heard them before I saw them. Diesel engines growling like predators. The crunch of gravel, the hiss of air brakes. 5 men, hard hats, yellow tape, spray paint. They walked straight to my fence and marked it like a corpse at a crime scene. Red X on the oak, blue circles around the roses, a black line through the mailbox post. "Hey," I shouted. "You're on private property." One of them checked a clipboard. "HOA order. I never approved this. We got paid." He shrugged. They cut the first board while I was still standing there. The sound of splitting oak was like bone snapping. I felt it in my stomach. Piece by piece, they tore it down. The roses fell with it, roots dragging up soil like exposed veins. My bench got knocked sideways. My mailbox snapped in half. Delilah arrived halfway through. She stood with her arms folded, sunglasses reflecting the lake. "This will be beautiful," she said. "A stone walkway, lights, benches. Everyone can enjoy the shore." "Everyone," I said. "Or just you?" She smiled again. "Don't be dramatic." I bent down and picked up a piece of broken plank, the one Sarah carved her initials into. "You didn't see a fence," I said quietly. "You saw an opportunity." She tilted her head. "I saw wasted access. The fence was gone by sunset. Where it had been, there was just dirt, torn roots, and the wide-open mouth of my yard. That night, I sat on my porch and watched the moonlight hit the water with nothing in between. No line, no barrier, no memory protected. She didn't just take wood. She took the last boundary between my past and her ambition, and she thought I'd fold. That was the first mistake she made, because what she didn't know, what she couldn't see, was that the fence wasn't the only thing Sarah and I built. We built records, we built maps, we built proof, and the land under her boots still knew my name. The day Delilah became HOA president, the neighborhood changed its posture. Lawns still got mowed. Boats still glided across the lake. Kids still rode bikes down the cul-de-sac. But underneath all of it, there was a new tension, like the air before a storm. You could feel it when people checked their mail. You could feel it when someone parked half an inch outside their driveway line and glanced around to see if she was watching. She ran unopposed. No flyers, no debates, just a short speech at the quarterly meeting about restoring order and maximizing shared value. People clapped because they didn't want to be rude, because she was new, because she sounded confident, because no one thought a woman who'd lived there for less than 2 months would suddenly start telling them how to live. The first week, nothing happened. The second week, the letters started, not just to me, to everyone. Grass too tall, trash cans out too long, boat covers the wrong shade of blue, bird feeders in the wrong zone, tiny things, petty things, the kind of rules that existed only if someone went looking for them. Then my letter came. It was thicker than the others. 2 pages, bold font, legal language, non-conforming structure, violation of aesthetic guidelines, obstruction of shoreline continue. Itty. I read it twice, then a third time. The fence had been there longer than most of the houses. It was in the original plans, approved, signed, stamped. I had copies in a fireproof box in my closet, so I assumed it was a mistake. I walked to the HOA office that afternoon. Delilah was sitting behind a brand new desk, not the old folding table they used before, a real executive desk, glass top, nameplate already printed. She didn't ask why I was there. She just looked up and smiled like she'd been expecting me. "I got your letter," I said. "Yes," she replied. "It's important we bring the shoreline into compliance. I have approval documents." She didn't reach for them when I slid them across the desk. "Those are outdated," she said. "They're permanent. Standards evolve. My wife and I built that fence." She clasped her hands. "Personal attachment doesn't override community benefit." "What community benefit?" I asked. "There's no public path there." "There will be, she said. That was the first time she said it out loud. Not might be, not we're considering. There will be. I walked out of that office knowing something was wrong, but not yet knowing how far she planned to go. 2 days later, another letter arrived. This one had numbers. A fine for non-compliance, a deadline, a threat of escalating penalties. I went door to door that evening. Mrs. Patterson had gotten 3 notices in 1 week. One for wind chimes, one for her mailbox paint, one for a rosebush that encroached on visual symmetry. Tom down the street had been fined for having a canoe leaning against his garage. Everyone said the same thing. She's strict. She's thorough. She's just doing her job. No one said she was dangerous yet. That came later. The 3rd letter warned of liens. I stood in my kitchen reading it while coffee went cold in my cup. Lien. That word doesn't mean much until it's attached to your house, until it whispers about foreclosure and forced sale and paperwork that doesn't care how long you've lived somewhere. I went back to the office. This is harassment, I said. She leaned back in her chair. It's governance. You're targeting me. I'm enforcing rules. You wrote the rules last week. She didn't deny it. I need lake access, she said. That sentence slipped out like truth escaping. You bought a house without it, and that was a mistake, she replied. One I intend to correct. From then on, the HOA became her tool. Meetings turned into trials. She sat at the head of the table. Neighbors sat in folding chairs like witnesses waiting to be called. When my name came up, she used words like obstruction and selfishness. He's preventing shared enjoyment of the lake, she told them. Shared. As if the lake itself had voted, as if property lines were just suggestions. I tried to speak. She cut me off. I raised my voice. She banged the gavel. This meeting will not tolerate hostility, she said, but her hostility was dressed in policy. She sent inspectors, not city inspectors. Volunteers with clipboards. They measured my fence like they were preparing to amputate it. They took photos. They whispered. One of them apologized under his breath. She's got us all scared, he said. The fines doubled, then tripled. Late fees, processing fees, special assessment fees. It wasn't about money. Not really. It was about pressure, about making the fence feel like a mistake, about making me feel like the problem. Then came the lien notice, a formal letter stating that continued non-compliance would result in legal action against my property. I stood at my window that night and watched Delilah's house glow across the road. Lights on every floor, music playing, guests laughing. She was throwing a party. I sat alone with a stack of threats and a fence she wanted erased. That's when I understood what she was doing. She wasn't arguing with me. She was exhausting me. If I fought, she fined. If I ignored, she escalated. If I protested, she documented. The HOA became her courtroom, and she was judge, jury, and author of the law. And she had something I didn't. Time, money, and neighbors who didn't want to be next. One afternoon, I caught her standing at the end of my dock, not on it, at it, looking down the length of it like she was imagining herself walking there. You can be here, I said. It's an HOA matter, she replied. No, it's a trespassing matter. She smiled. For now, another letter arrived the next day. Final notice. The language was colder this time. Failure to remove structure will result in HOA-managed remediation. Remediation. That's the word they use when they don't want to say demolition. I went to the office again. You're going to tear it down, I said. She didn't deny it. I will restore shoreline access. You're stealing. I'm improving. You don't own that land. She leaned forward. Ownership is flexible near water. That was when I realized she wasn't just bullying. She believed herself. She believed authority meant truth, that paperwork could bend geography, that enough letters could turn someone else's memory into community property. And she was counting on one thing, that I was just an old man with a fence, that I didn't know the difference between intimidation and law, that I would give up, that I would walk down to the water one morning and accept that it wasn't mine anymore. She didn't see a husband, she didn't see a promise. She saw leverage, and she pulled it with both hands. The HOA became her megaphone, her shield, her excuse. Every threat came with a logo, every lie came with a signature, and every step she took closer to my shoreline came wrapped in the word compliance. But what she didn't understand was this. You can use an HOA as a weapon. You can turn neighbors into witnesses. You can dress greed up as governance. But land remembers, and so do the people who built something on it with love. And every letter she sent, every fine she printed, every threat she mailed, she was only teaching me exactly how far she was willing to go, which meant I could start planning how hard she was going to fall. I woke up to the sound of engines, not the soft hum of a neighbor's boat, not the distant growl of traffic. This was heavy, close, mechanical, the kind of sound that makes your bones pay attention before your mind does. I stepped onto the porch with my coffee still steaming in my hand and saw them. 2 flatbed trucks, a pickup with a trailer, men in bright vests unloading equipment like they were setting up a stage. Sawhorses, toolboxes, rolls of orange mesh, spray paint. They were standing in front of my fence. My fence, for a second, I just watched. My brain kept trying to turn it into something harmless. City workers, utility crew, wrong address. Any explanation that didn't involve what my eyes were already telling me. Then one of them lifted a can of red spray paint and drew a huge X across the oak plank Sarah had carved her initials into. I set the coffee down so hard it sloshed over the rim. "Hey!" I shouted, walking down the steps. "What do you think you're doing?" A man with a hard hat looked up from his clipboard. "HO, a work order. This is private property." He shrugged. "We're just doing the job." Another man circled the rose bushes and sprayed blue rings around their bases like they were crime scene evidence. Someone else ran a chalk line along the fence posts. The air smelled like diesel and fresh paint and crushed petals. I stepped between them and the fence. "You don't have permission." One of them hesitated. "Lady said it was community land." She lied. He looked at the clipboard again. She paid. That was the moment. The first saw started. The blade bit into oak with a scream that made my stomach drop. A vibration ran through the fence like a dying animal. Wood dust puffed into the air. One board fell inward, hitting the grass with a dull thud. "No," I said louder this time. "Stop!" They didn't. Another board went, then another. Each one felt like a small funeral. The roses collapsed with the posts, thorns catching on splintered wood, petals tearing loose and drifting down like they didn't know where to land anymore. My mailbox snapped off its post and rolled into the dirt. The bench Sarah and I built together tipped sideways when a falling panel clipped it. I could hear my own heartbeat over the saw. "Get off my land!" I yelled. Then her voice cut through the noise. "Don't be dramatic." Delilah stood at the edge of the yard in sunglasses and a white blazer, phone in her hand like she was filming a renovation show. "This is approved," she said. "You were notified. You're destroying my property." "I'm restoring access," she replied. "This shoreline belongs to the community. It belongs to me." She smiled like I'd said something quaint. "That's a matter of interpretation." The fence was halfway down now. A gap wide enough for anyone to walk through yawned open where the roses used to climb. "What are you building?" I asked. She gestured. "A stone pathway, lighting, benches, a safe, elegant route to the water. You should be grateful." "Grateful for what?" "For being part of something bigger than yourself." Another plank fell. The men moved fast, too fast for this to be improvised. Stakes went into the ground, strings stretched between them. The sound of shovels followed, biting into soil that had been undisturbed for decades. I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just a rule dispute anymore. This was an invasion. "Stop the work," I said. She didn't even look at the crew. "Continue. I called the city. I called the non-emergency line. I called my lawyer's voicemail." Delilah paced like a director, pointing where the path should curve, where lights would go, where a small stone wall might frame the view. By noon, my fence was gone. Not damaged, not partially removed. Gone. In its place was a strip of torn earth, chalk lines, and rebar rods poking up like the bones of Somme. Anything buried too shallow. Neighbors gathered at the edges of their yards. Some whispered, some filmed. No one intervened. Delilah addressed them like a mayor unveiling a park. "This will raise property values," she said. "We all deserve lake access." I looked at the empty space where my fence had been and felt exposed in a way I hadn't since Sarah died. The yard looked wrong without it, like a room without walls. One of the workers dumped a load of crushed stone where my roses had been. "Stop," I said again. He looked at Delilah. She nodded. The stones hit the dirt with a sound like rain on a coffin. By mid-afternoon, the path had a shape, a curve from the street to the water, wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side. A trench was dug for wiring. A pallet of pavers waited like teeth stacked in a jaw. "This is theft," I said. "This is progress," she answered. "You're trespassing." She tilted her head. "Prove it." I stood there looking at the land Sarah and I had measured with a tape and a laugh, now being redesigned by someone who thought it was just a shortcut. "Community land," she said again, like if she said it enough, it would be true. When the crew left for the day, the shoreline looked like a wound that hadn't decided whether to heal or scar. Dirt piles, broken roots, stone dust. The lake reflected the sky like nothing had happened. Delilah lingered. "Tomorrow we lay the pavers," she said. "By the weekend, people will be walking through here, through my yard, through the future," she replied. She turned and walked away like she'd just bought something fair and square. I went down to the water after she left. I picked up a piece of the fence, the one with Sarah's initials. The wood still smelled like sun and old varnish. I sat on the broken bench and stared at the fake boundary she'd created with chalk and string. She thought this was a legal fight. She thought this was about authority. She thought if she moved fast enough, if she spent enough money, if she put enough stone on top of my memories, I'd have no choice but to accept it. She thought I was just a man with a fence. She didn't know what I did for a living, and she didn't know that the land she was paving over still had its original lines buried beneath it, waiting for someone who knew how to read them. After the fence came down, everyone expected me to explode. They expected shouting, lawsuits, police, maybe even a scene on the evening news. Delilah expected that most of all. I could see it in the way she glanced over whenever she walked by, waiting for me to do something loud and foolish that she could frame as proof I was the problem. Instead, I went quiet, not because I gave up, because I started paying attention. The next morning, the trucks came back. Same crew, same confident march onto my land like it already belonged to them. They unloaded pallets of stone pavers, coils of copper wire, steel edging, real money, the kind of materials you don't buy unless you're sure of yourself. I stood on my porch with a mug of coffee and watched. Delilah arrived 10 minutes later, dressed like she was attending a ribbon cutting instead of a trespass. She pointed, gestured, corrected angles with her shoe. And I did something she didn't expect. I sighed loudly. I shook my head. I rubbed my face like a tired man who'd finally lost. She noticed. "You could have avoided all this," she said, walking over like she was offering mercy. "I can't fight the HOA," I muttered. "They always win." She smiled. That was all she needed to hear. The workers dug trenches for wiring. They poured gravel. They set the first row of pavers into the soil where Sarah's roses had been. Every stone felt like a dollar bill being buried in my yard. I kept my voice small. "I don't understand how you can do this." "It's lawful," she replied, "and it will benefit everyone. I just want my fence back." She waved her hand. "You'll thank me when it's done." And then she said something that told me everything I needed to know. "I've already paid the contractor. Paid. Up front." I nodded like I was defeated. Inside, I started counting. The lighting alone was expensive. Low-voltage landscape lights with stainless steel casings, not cheap plastic. The stone was imported limestone, cut, not poured. The retaining edge was reinforced steel. This wasn't a shortcut. This was an investment, and she was making it on land she didn't own. So I let her. I let her spend. I let her build. I let her think she'd won. I began measuring at night, not with anything obvious. No bright tape measure, no stakes, just a notebook, a compass app, and the old tools I'd used for 30 years before retirement. I paced the boundary lines I already knew by heart, from the oak stump near the water to the cracked concrete corner by the shed, From the dock post to the iron pin buried near the driveway, every step confirmed what I already suspected. She was building entirely on my property. Not partly, not accidentally, fully. I entered everything. Dates, times, photos, video, drone footage from a neighbor's kid who owed me a favor, receipts from her contractor dumped in the HOA trash. I copied them when no one was looking. $12,000 for stone, $9,000 for labor, $7,500 for lighting, another invoice for shoreline beautification. By the third week it passed 40,000. Delilah strutted through the neighborhood like she'd personally paved Rome. "Isn't it beautiful?" she told people. They nodded. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked impressed. I played my role. I told Mrs. Patterson I was scared. I told Tom I didn't want trouble. I told Delilah I couldn't afford court. Every word I said fed her confidence. The more helpless I looked, the more she spent. Benches arrived. Heavy carved stone benches with decorative backs. A small stone wall went in near the water, framing the dock like a picture. She even ordered engraved plaques. Willowbrook Shore Walk. She named it On My Land. That was when she crossed from arrogant into careless. Because when people feel victorious, they stop hiding. She'd billed the HOA for everything. Every invoice, every light, every stone, her company, her signature. I copied it all. I let the neighbors walk through it once it was finished. Let them enjoy it. Let them praise it. Delilah thought that meant acceptance. She didn't know I was mapping every square inch beneath their feet. One afternoon, she found me sitting on the broken bench, looking at the path. "See?" she said. "Doesn't it look better this way?" "It looks expensive," I replied. She laughed. "Quality costs. You must really trust your lawyer." "I am my lawyer." That was another gift she didn't realize she'd given me. I started acting confused. "I don't even know where my property line is anymore." She smiled. "Neither does anyone else." She thought that was power. I thought it was proof. The city inspector finally showed up when someone complained about permits. He walked the path slowly, checked his tablet. "There's no permit for this." Delilah swooped in. "It's our land." He raised an eyebrow. "It's mapped as private," she argued. I stayed quiet. He issued a stop work order. Delilah lost her temper for the first time. "This is sabotage," she snapped, glaring at me. I shrugged. I thought it was allowed. She believed I was scared. She believed I was weak. She believed I was old. What she didn't believe was that I was counting, that I was letting her finish the mistake before I revealed it. At night I traced the old survey maps across my kitchen table. Originals from 1987, signed by men who are dead now, marked with bearings and monuments that still existed. I checked them against satellite images, against city GIS records, against the iron pins I uncovered with a metal detector where the grass met gravel. Everything lined up, the path, the lights, the wall, all of it, mine. I wrote it all down. When Delilah added a second bench, I wrote another line. When she installed the final row of pavers, I wrote another page. She thought she was building a road to the lake. She was building my evidence. She thought I was panicking. I was preparing. And the more beautiful it became, the more valuable it got, which meant the fall was going to hurt more, because when people spend money on something they don't own, they don't lose a path. They lose their certainty. They lose their story. They lose the illusion that power can move land. I let her finish. I let the path shine. I let the neighbors enjoy it. I let her feel untouchable. Because delayed revenge isn't about waiting. It's about letting someone build the monument to their own mistake. Stone by stone. Dollar by dollar. Right on top of ground that still belonged to me. The first thing I did after she finished the path was take out the maps, not the copies I kept for casual reference. The originals. The ones Sarah used to joke about because they looked like pirate treasure. Thick paper, faded ink, handwritten bearings and distances from a time when surveyors trusted metal and math more than satellites. I spread them across the kitchen table and weighted the corners with coffee mugs. 1987 plat map, county boundary record, lakeshore easement chart, deed description. All of them said the same thing in different languages. The shoreline was mine. Not part of the HOA, not shared, not ambiguous. Mine. From the oak stump to the iron pin near the drive, from the water's high mark to the rear boundary by the shed. And the path. Every inch of it sat inside that line. I went outside with a metal detector and found the buried markers the old survey notes referenced. Still there. Still solid. Still speaking the truth under the grass. I took photos. I measured distances. I wrote down coordinates. I marked where her lights crossed the line, where her wall did, where the pavers curved just enough to prove intention instead of accident. Then I checked something else. Permits. There weren't any. Not city, not sea. County, not environmental. She had torn up shoreline soil without approval, installed electrical wiring without inspection, built a structure on private land without consent. Every single step was illegal. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was the money, because she hadn't paid for this herself. She billed the HOA. I got a copy of the financial records when a neighbor accidentally forwarded them to the wrong email address. It was a mistake he made because he was scared and tired and wanted help reading the numbers. What I saw made my hands shake. Thornfield Construction Management, incorporated 2 weeks after she became HOA president. Same address as her house, same signature as hers, same handwriting on every invoice. She had created her own company, then hired herself to build a path on my land and build the community for it. I sat in my chair and laughed once, just once, because suddenly this wasn't about a fence anymore. It was about fraud. I lined the papers up, invoice for stone, invoice for labor, invoice for lighting, invoice for consultation. Dates matched her HOA actions. Amounts climbed with every letter she sent me. And right in the middle of it, buried in a payment memo, were the words, Shoreline Access Initiative. Access to what? My yard. I took everything to a property attorney. He didn't even blink when he saw the maps. You own it, he said. What about the path? He smiled. Then she just improved your property. I felt something inside me turn over. All this time she thought she was stealing something. She was gifting it. The lawyer looked at the invoices and shook his head slowly. She billed the OR for work done on your private land without permits or authorization. That's embezzlement. That's worse, he said. That's stupid embezzlement. We filed requests for records. We notified the city about unpermitted construction. We prepared a boundary certification using my measurements and county archives. I didn't tell Delilah. I didn't warn her. I waited. She started getting nervous when inspectors came around, when the lights stopped working because the wiring failed inspection, when the HOA treasurer asked about duplicate charges. I still played the broken man. I don't know what to do, I told her one day. Everyone says I'm wrong. She smiled. Because you are, she said it like a verdict. I scheduled an HOA meeting, emergency session. She thought it was, for me. She was wrong. Neighbors packed the room, phones out, murmurs everywhere. Delilah sat at the head of the table like always. I stood up slowly. I'd like to present something, I said. She frowned. This meeting is about compliance. Yes, I said. Mine. I handed out copies, maps, photos, invoices, permit denials. You could hear the room change as people started reading. One man whispered, "Wait, this says his property." Another said, "Why are we paying for this?" Delilah stood. "This is misinterpretation." I pointed at the screen behind me. Satellite overlay with survey lines, her path glowing like a scar across my boundary. "This is my land," I said, "and that path was built without my permission, without permits, and with HOA money." She laughed sharply. "That's absurd." "So are these," I said, and held up her invoices. Silence fell. The treasurer spoke. "D. Elila, what is Thornfield Construction?" Her jaw tightened. "My firm. You hired yourself. I provided a service. On his land. She tried to speak. No words came out. That was the moment the power shifted. You could feel it. People stopped looking at her and started looking at me. She wasn't the authority anymore. She was the defendant. This path, I said, is now legally mine, along with every stone, light, bench and wall she installed. Someone gasped, and the HOA paid for it. The city inspector stepped forward. We'll need to shut it down until violations are resolved. Delilah slammed her hand on the table. This is a setup. No, I said quietly. It's a survey. She didn't know what to do with that. Her weapon had been rules. Mine was reality. Her power had been position. Mine was proof. She looked around the room and realized, for the first time, that she didn't own the story anymore. She had built her plan on the assumption that I didn't know where my land was. That assumption was her downfall. Because land doesn't care about HOA titles, it cares about lines. And I had every one of them. The meeting was supposed to be about me. That's what Delilah told everyone. Emergency OA session regarding ongoing obstruction and hostile conduct, the notice read. She printed it on thick paper this time, like weight would make it more official. She even hired security. 2 men in black jackets stood by the door like we were about to hold a trial instead of a neighborhood meeting. When I walked in, the room went quiet. Every chair was filled. People leaned against walls. Phones were already out. Someone had brought a tripod. The energy felt wrong, like the second before a storm hits a lake and the water flattens out too much. Delilah sat at the front with a stack of binders and a court reporter she'd hired herself. Let's begin, she said, tapping the gavel. This meeting concerns repeated non-compliance and disruptive behavior by... The door opened. 2 uniformed police officers stepped in. Behind them was a city inspector. Behind him was my attorney, and behind all of them were 3 neighbors holding folders. Delilah froze mid-sentence. What is this? She snapped. Public meeting, one of the officers said. We were asked to attend. She forced a smile. This is a private HOA matter. No, my attorney said calmly. It isn't. I stood. I'd like to speak, I said. Delilah's jaw tightened. You're not recognized. I don't need to be. I walked to the front with a folder in my hand. I was accused of obstruction, of refusing community access, of violating HOA rules. But today, I want to show you what was actually done. I handed the first document to the treasurer. Survey map. Then another. Property line overlay. Then another. Photo of the path crossing the boundary. Then invoices. People leaned forward. One woman whispered, "That's his yard." I pointed at the screen where my lawyer projected the image. The path glowed bright across the line. This stone path was built entirely on my private property, I said, without my consent, without permits, and using HOA funds. Delilah stood so fast her chair scraped. That's a lie. Then explain these, I said, holding up her invoices. Thornfield Construction Management. Murmurs rippled through the room. The treasurer's voice shook. Delilah, is that your company? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I disclosed my involvement. No, you didn't, he said. You signed both sides of the contract. The city inspector stepped forward. There are no permits for this construction. Electrical work was done without inspection. Shoreline disturbance violates municipal code. Delilah laughed, sharp and brittle. This is harassment. He's mentally unstable. That's when Mrs. Patterson stood. I recorded you, she said, voice trembling but loud. You told me you could make people sell if they didn't cooperate. She played the audio. Delilah's voice filled the room, smug and casual. Property values are fragile. People like him should move on. Silence, someone gasped. A man near the door muttered, Jesus. Delilah slammed the table. This is a conspiracy. The officer stepped closer. Ma'am, please calm down. I will not calm down. This man is sabotaging the HOA. My lawyer spoke. We've also uncovered financial discrepancies totaling over $47,000 paid to her personal company for work done on land she does not own. People started shouting. You stole from us? We paid for his yard? That's our money. Delilah's face went red. You don't understand governance. You built on his land. Someone yelled. She turned on me. You let me. Yes, I said. I did. The room went quiet. I let you finish. Because once it was done, it became mine. Her mouth fell open. The inspector cleared his throat. "This construction must be shut down immediately, and there will be fines," the officer added, "and potential charges for false reporting and misuse of funds." Delilah backed away from the table. "This is unfair. You called the police on me last week," I said, "for threats I didn't make." The officer looked at her. "Those messages came from a spoofed number," he said. "We traced them." Her eyes darted around the room. "This is out of context." "No," I said, "it's finally in context." The treasurer stood. "As of now, I motion to suspend Delilah Thornfield as HOA president pending investigation." Hands went up. Almost all of them. Her gavel fell from her hand. She looked around like she didn't recognize anyone anymore. "You need me," she said. "I control the legal standing of this HOA." "No," my lawyer replied. "You abused it." The officer stepped forward again. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us." "For what?" she demanded. "Fraud. Embezzlement. False police report." The room erupted. Phones lifted higher. Someone started clapping. Delilah's voice broke. "You can't do this to me." She pointed at me. "He planned this. I met her eyes. You planned it first." The officers guided her toward the door. She twisted away. "This isn't over." But it was. As the door closed behind her, the room exhaled like it had been holding its breath for weeks. The path outside was still lit, still beautiful, still standing. But now everyone knew whose land it was on, and whose money paid for it. The bully lost her megaphone, the liar lost her story, and the woman who thought she could move land with authority learned the one thing she never measured: where the truth was buried. When the dust settled, the path was still there. The light still came on at sunset, casting warm lines across the stone like something out of a resort brochure. The benches still faced the water. The little retaining wall still framed the dock like a picture in a gallery, but Delilah was gone. Her name came off the HOA letterhead within 48 hours. The bank froze the HOA account pending investigation. The city taped a red notice to the lighting control box, "Inspection required," and the most important thing of all stayed exactly where it was. The land. Mine. My lawyer stood beside me at the edge of the path 3 days after her arrest, boots in the dirt where roses used to grow. "She built it," he said, "but she built it on your property. That means it's yours." I looked down at the stone under my feet. Imported limestone, perfect cuts, expensive grout, light set flush into the edges so no one could trip. "My wife and I built a fence," I said. "She built a park." He smiled. "Then she upgraded your fence." The HOA tried to argue at first. They said it was community improvement. They said it was for everyone. They said taking it away would be unfair. The city didn't care. No permits, no easement, no public right of way. Private land is private land. They shut the path down officially that Friday. Yellow tape went up across the entrance. A notice went up on the light post. People stopped walking through my yard. And for the first time in weeks, it was quiet again. I walked the path alone that evening. The lake was calm, like it had been the summer Sarah and I built the fence. The stones were warm from the sun. The lights clicked on one by one as the sky turned orange. It was beautiful, not because she built it, because it was mine. The HOA board dissolved within a month. Nobody wanted the job after what happened. Too much paperwork, too much fear, too many lawyers involved. They voted to replace it with a voluntary neighborhood committee instead. No fines, no liens, no threats, just agreements and handshakes like it used to be. They offered to pay me back for the fence. I declined. I rebuilt it myself. Not the same way. Better. Thicker posts, treated oak, deeper footings. And instead of roses, I planted white lilacs. Sarah's favorite. I followed the original line exactly. The real line. The one she thought she could erase with stone. The fence didn't block the path. It framed it. The stone walkway now ended at my gate, a private gate. One afternoon, Mrs. Patterson walked over while I was staining the new boards. "It's nice," she said. "It's expensive," I replied. She laughed. She paid for it. That became the joke in the neighborhood. She paved his yard. She landscaped his inheritance. She built his retirement path. Delilah's house went up for sale 6 months later. The sign didn't last long. Someone bought it cheap. Nobody wanted to be known as the person who lived in the fraud house. The HOA money was partially recovered. The rest disappeared with her. And the path, I kept it. I added a small sign near the gate. Private shoreline walk. No trespassing, not angry, not threatening. Just true. On warm mornings, I sit on one of her benches and drink coffee where my fence used to be. The water hits the shore the same way it always has. The birds don't care who paid for the stones. The lake doesn't care who tried to own it. What changed was the lesson. You can threaten with letters, you can bully with rules, you can fake authority, but you can't rewrite a boundary just because you want something bad enough. She thought power was a pen. She thought law was a voice. She thought land was negotiable. She was wrong. Now the lights that once marked her shortcut light my evenings. The stones she laid to steal my shore lead only to my gate, and the fence she destroyed stands stronger than before, not as a wall, as a line. Between greed and ownership, between force and fact, between what she wanted and what she could never take. She wanted lake access. Now I own the entire shoreline.